Captain Quazar is a quirky little action game published on a 3DO in 1996, right at the end of that console's life cycle. It features an ego-driven galactic policeman taking down bad guys all across the universe, interspersed with some absurdist humour. Think a retro Ratchet and Clank. Across the internet, there have been many making-ofs and histories of some of the best known games of all time, but many of the lesser known titles have a lot less information known about them, especially the development. Through this series, we're going to look at some of these games, uncovering facts and stories that have never been told before. To find out the story of how this game was made, I sat down with the developers of the title to have a roundtable discussion about the making of Captain Quazar.
Hi, yeah, I'm Ron Little, and I was the lead programmer on Captain Quazar, and my friend Helmut and I started Cyclone Studios.
I'm Greg Savoia. I was the lead artist. Didn't most of the art, but yeah.
I'm Yujin Kiem, and Greg did all of the art. I think I came on to Cyclone. That was right when I started Cyclone, so I didn't do as much on Captain Quazar as I did on Battlesport later. But I was an artist, junior artist.
There was a slight audio glitch here, but additionally, we have Jennifer Hubbard, who worked on most of the video processing on the game. Throughout this video, you'll also hear mention of another person called Helmut Kobler. His role was creative designer on the game, and additionally, he was co-founder of Cyclone Studios along with Ron. He wasn't able to be a part of this discussion, unfortunately, but most of the game's design and style came from him, and I think his contributions are shown throughout the discussion.
Yeah, I enjoyed playing games and I enjoyed programming. I changed majors in college because to be a programmer, to be a computer science major, and I did not put the two together right away. I had another friend in college, and his uncle had a civil engineering company, and that was my first real job programming, was civil engineering software. But Helmut loved to play games. I played games with him, and on the computer. And he had this internship at the 3DO company, and decided, hey, this is fun. Why don't we do this? And so he pulled me away from our mutual friend. And so that's how it got going. We're just working in our apartment, and went to 3DO University, started interviewing programmers in my apartment, and he handled the business aspects. He had a friend who gave him $20,000 or $30,000, and now I'm kind of rambling. So that my interest in games was high, but it was not why I became a programmer, I guess is the short answer to your question.
I had been a production assistant at 3DO and worked on baseball games mostly. And before that, I was a teacher, and I taught kids computer skills on the old, is it Mac-E? Wait, what is that? The old one that looked like a fishbowl, little one? Oh, I don't even know. Anyway.
There's the SE.
I don't remember. So I my background was in education. Then I got the job at 3DO and was a production assistant basically on that, and a few other games. A game called Twisted. It was a fun game on the 3DO. So that's my background. Product placement. Anyway, that's about it.
I was a film major in college, and ended up getting into animation as well. And so I was making an animated film, and after I graduated, I went to school at UC Santa Barbara, but I grew up in San Jose, and came back after I graduated, and there's a junior college, De Anza in Cupertino, and they had a good film department. And so, I'm dating myself, but there wasn't even, video wasn't that accessible. So I had to do pencil tests with a camera and all that. And they had good equipment there. So I was just able to use their equipment. And through that, I met Kim Tempest, who was an instructor there. and she also happened to work at 3DO. And so she said, hey, why don't you come and work on these games with me? And so I did. And then just got into doing game art and animation and just learning everything like pretty quickly. I mean, looking back on it now, it's like, yeah, it went pretty fast in that first year. And we're just getting all our boxes. This was our first game. Escape from Monster Manor.
Oh.
We made it in like 6 months.
Nice.
Not much of a game, but yeah. And then after that year is when Helmet, I think he had just got my name from other people at 3DO and called me up, and then I joined with Ron and Helmet.
Nice. So your interest was more coming from animation and film.
I mean, I played games, like Atari, when that first came out. But then I didn't really play that much in college. It seemed like I kind of missed the Nintendo years. But I was also interested in 3DO at the time because they're actually touting it as like a virtual reality machine. Like that was a potential, and I was pretty interested in that. And now it's taken like almost 30 years to get there, but we do a lot of VR now.
Because a big selling point of that sort of small period in video games was that they were trying to sort of combine film and games.
Yeah,
but that was the selling point.
Definitely had that too. They had the disc drive and they had movies in there. Pretty compressed movies.
Cool. What about you then, Yujin?
I used to love playing video games, but like old school arcades and pizza parlors and 7-Elevens type of thing when I was in high school. I have a big gap in between that and then falling into games. I went and studied fine arts and ended up in following that path. But then after graduating, I was a printmaker and started the desktop or graphic, what they used to call it, desktop publishing revolution, quote unquote, happened. And luckily where we are, in the Bay Area, it's pretty much on the cutting edge of that. So my wife and I are both artists. She's a graphic designer as well. So we started getting into the early Macs and Photoshop, and I just loved it because it was like it's a printmaker's tool, basically, but a digital version. And then my wife had a really good friend who had worked at Crystal Dynamics with Helmet. And then she was saying, they need artists, and we were getting into digital. And I said, wait, you can make a living at this? So I thought that was really cool. And she showed me some of the games she was working on and had worked on it. And I was like, okay, I fell in love with that. And then she got me I think Helmet had contacted her to see if she would work for Cyclone, but then she was already at Crystal. So she just referred me, and then that's where I met Martin and Greg and Ron and Jenna, and they picked me up eventually. I think I freelanced with 3DO for like a year, and then finally got picked up. But I came on the tail end of Quazar, mostly on Battlesport, but it was fun working with Greg and Martin and Ron.
Yeah, that's a great question. It was really through Helmet and his connection to the 3DO company, and so he had friends there, and then
You worked there.
He worked there. Had his internship there, and so it made it easy to develop for them, having all of those connections. And so he felt like if we produced the game on our own, that he would have a very good chance of having 3DO become our publisher. And that's exactly what happened. And so we were self-funded for 6 months. And so that meant, no salary. Helmet had borrowed some money from a friend, and that purchased our equipment. And I attended 3DO University, which was helpful. I don't know. Yeah, it was an exciting time. And for us, for me, it was my first game, of making a game. I had done some software, but it was civil engineering software professionally. Before that, a little bit of software, like Western Digital for graphics cards. So let's see. So business-wise, that 6-month period was pretty critical. Like I was just about to run out of money personally. Like, I wouldn't be able to pay my rent unless I sold my car. That's kind of where it was coming down to. And my grandfather kicked in, I think it was $2,000 or $3,000. He just sent me a check. Super nice of him. I paid my parents back for some reason. I'm not sure why I didn't pay him back. But that just got us through where we pitched it to 3DO, and 3DO gave the thumbs up. And then they were a publisher, and so then at least we had just enough money to live on, and so it's a bare minimum salary, and but that was enough. So like where we could hire more people, and contract artists, and at first, and what else? Yeah, it was exciting. With the Mac, it was my first time on a Mac, and I remember my first hard drive. I don't know if this is the kind of detail you want. It was like this size, and it was a full gigabyte, one whole gigabyte, which was really big at the time. That was as I recall, it was $1,100. So we've come a long, long, long way. You can get multiple terabytes for under $100, I think now. So so that was just an exciting period, and I interviewed people in my apartment, and we tend to hire programmers right out of college because it's cheaper, and I guess we just felt comfortable because I had just graduated from college. Helmut and I both went to UC Berkeley, and that's how we met. What was that college? And that was the origin. And then that lasted for a few years. So you asked about like business decisions. We did shop around to other companies, like to be publishers, but it didn't pan out. So we really had our heart set on the 3DO company, and we had a producer there who became good friends with Helmut and myself, and he was like our champion. And so it just it felt easy to stay at 3DO, and then 3DO eventually bought us. Cool. So that was kind of the origin.
Interesting. You mentioned 3DO University.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
What is that? Yeah, it was a training program at, they held it at their office in Redwood Shores, yeah. Just like a conference room, and they brought people in. They had all the computers set up on rows of desks, and they just, for programmers anyway, they took you through like a sample game. Here's how you do a game loop. Here's whatever initialization you need to set up, for the screen, and what resolution you're running at, I guess. I don't know if we have a choice. What else? Just basic things like how to load art, how to display it. And so Captain Quazar started as a sample app. And so I literally had their code, the sample code, and at least then I could compile and run something. And then I just started throwing art at it and code, and just growing it to, so that's how that started.
Yeah, it is interesting to hear about that the 3DO company was doing things like that. That they sort of had all these ideas and schemes, and they're trying to.
Yeah, I think
they're different in that way, I think.
Yeah, I think Tripp, the founder, his claim to fame was he was number 3 at Apple, and he had lots of connections there and ideas of how to do things. So I think that's what he kind of built on, his experiences there at Apple.
Yeah. Other unusual things about the 3DO company, I think they're unusual, is they had a newsletter for developers, like just fun things going on at the 3DO company, and Helmut worked on that.
Oh.
I don't know why. They tried to create the content library. They had the idea that 3DO companies should license tens of thousands of photos and tens of thousands of sound effects. And that we would use that to make our games. Right from the beginning, I thought that was a bad idea.
It was.
And it was, as far as I can tell, it was a bad idea. I don't think, because every game is different. Every game wants its own, visual appeal. It's like, maybe a sound effect can be used here or there, but really, it was different. It was wild. Yeah, I mean, that was 3D.
People are still trying that to this day.
I know the all-purpose libraries and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, for a game engine, it works. Yeah.
Procedurally generated. That's the pipe dream.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, because Chip Hawkins, he always at EA, when they first started making games, they put all the developers' names in to all their cases, and
Right.
fully
Electronic
highlight
Arts,
them.
the rock stars.
The Rockstar, Bill Budge.
Bill Budge, yeah.
Yeah,
Bill Budge told us that was Tripp's idea, that we waived that. Was it one magazine? Was it Wired? It was a Wired magazine or something with all the first EA team, like looking like rock stars. Remember, Bill Budge had the studded leather glove.
Yeah, it was like he was going like this.
Yeah, he was so young and cool, and we're like, that's Bill. And we asked him about that. And he said, "Oh yeah." And by that time, he had his bifocals on. He was looking at the magazines, like, "Yeah, that was Trip Hawkins' idea. Video game developers as rock stars. That's what he wanted to pitch." Yeah.
And his background was in marketing. I mean, that's what he did at Apple. He was their marketing person. So.
That's a good question. At the very beginning, it was pretty free and loose. Helmut came up with the original idea and the kind of the view, this isometric projection, well, still 2D though, kind of top-down scrolling kind of game, and the idea of Captain Quazar being this intergalactic policeman, I guess. So that core idea came from him, and our inspiration was, one inspiration was the Horde. And so it just had a really good look. We saw an advertisement at some point, like, that had a little bit of gameplay, and Helmut put it on a loop on a VHS tape. We're really dating ourselves. And so we could watch it over and over and over again. And so that helped inform me on the programming side that like how to structure the tiles, being twice as wide as high worked out pretty well. Things like that. Just it helped inform the view. And so as far as the corporate or company environment, I had a lot of work just programming. It was just getting the game logic in, building the editor. So to make the content, it had to be in the game. So it's just special control modes, and you use the little the 3D controller to place tiles, to place buildings. I had to build all those tools, and then plus the game engine and just all the game logic. And so I was pretty focused on that. I wrote in my resume that I did 60% of the programming. That's probably fair. And just getting it going. Then we had some contractors help me flush out some levels. So yeah, it was a lot of work. So for my experience was programming, not a lot of game design. There were some sessions where Helmut and I sat down, and 3DO wanted us to write on paper, like sketch out the levels, which it felt a little tedious and kind of silly maybe, but yeah, so we did it. So I had input into that. And then once Battlesport got going, Helmut's attention was drawn away from that. And there was another, we hired a game designer, Tim. And where am I going with this? I don't want to speak poorly of people, I guess. I'm trying not to do that. We're all working very hard. But I felt like the game design was kind of getting away from us. I really wish Helmut had more time to spend on it. But yeah, we were just really stretched then. What else? As far as game design, 3DO participated too. It's like, so our producer came to me and said, this is like a year into production, and said, it really needs to be 2 players.
Oh God.
And that's a big change. From 100% assumption of 1 player, and now we're going to have 2 players. We have no way to fit in a second character in terms of art budget and memory budget. Absolutely impossible. So someone had the idea that we just, we could change palettes though. Palettes are very cheap and small, so we just have a different palette. So that's Captain Quazar's
Pulsar, his like
Pulsar, his twin brother. Apparently, I don't know how that works. But yeah, African American man, and there you go. So different palette, same art, but that was. But yeah, so we got in 2 players, and that added a good chunk of work. So that was a game design element that came from 3DO. Greg and Yujin, did you guys participate in any design meetings as far as gameplay?
I was wondering about that. I don't really remember design meeting per se. I would just get a big list of art to make and then go to it because there's a lot to get done. But I don't really remember too much game design. I was wondering about that. Like, I don't remember 3DO being that involved with it really. It seems like we were kind of on our own.
There were occasional checkup meetings, but not a lot of oversight, I would have to say. On the whole.
It's kind of weird looking back.
Yeah. I know.
They'd be all,
but we didn't even have a fixed schedule or fixed budget, to my knowledge. It was like, just get it done when you can, I guess. Towards the end, I had someone call me a couple times, some executives saying, so how's it going? I think they're getting anxious. But I had a bug list, as long as my arm and then some. Just all the levels, plenty of opportunities for bugs.
So on the art side then, Greg, how much of it did you sort of design yourself? So were you given just make a character, or were you given like very specific?
Well, the character that was designed by, I'm not sure if Bob Terrell designed the character, but he's the guy who did the cinematics, and so that was already pretty much established, I think, when I got in. I'm trying to think. I think he had already started on cinematics, but he did the Quazar model, which was done in, I think, Animation Master. Does that sound right?
I think so.
The early 3D program. But then I did everything else as far as like the environments and all the buildings and just everything on the explosions and just the environment stuff. And then I did some of the death animations and stuff like that. But yeah, as far as I concepted stuff. I would just draw it out on paper. Helmut would usually have some input, like what he was kind of expecting to see. It was usually just a list of things we needed, like, barracks, teleporter. And so I'd sketch these things out, and then I would scan them into the computer and then paint them. So it was all mainly 2D.
Yeah, because it's sort of a combination between pre-rendered.
Yeah. So the character was pre-rendered, and then most of the art was 2D, just hand painted.
Interesting. Did that was it any more difficult to put in the pre-rendered bits alongside the 2D parts?
No, not really. They would just come in as sprites. So, it would just be a 2D film strip, basically, of the character and all the positions. So that just came in as any other art would. but yeah, just matching the style to make it look like the other stuff was 3D as well. It had to have a pretty good amount of depth. And it was all at the isometric perspective. So yeah, it was a lot of hand painting to make it look 3D. I remember seeing some reviews that they thought it was actually 3D. So.
Nice.
That's good.
It looked great.
It did. But
Yeah, considering our palettes, they were very limited. Was it 256 colors or?
I think it was.
At most, yeah.
So we had to
But
crunch.
I think each object had its own palette, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So that helped a lot.
Coded 8, is that what it was called? Just popped into my head.
I feel like there was a lot of manual making of the palettes that now you would, sample down or something, but you created, I thought,
Yeah,
palette and drew from the palette, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of actually picking the pixels for each palette. It was pretty tedious. Do you remember, Ron? It seemed like some of that existed before we started the game, but I think it was kind of simultaneously. But the music video, it did set the tone of the game, I guess. But we were working pretty much in concert with Paul Trail. And yeah, do you remember? Did Helmut write the rap?
Oh, I forgot about that.
He worked with Burke Treichman.
Oh, Burke, yeah.
Burke was as a contractor, and so he did the music for us. And he gave us some different samples, and Helmut would choose from kind of a high level conceptually what we were aiming for. But Burke found the talent, did the recordings.
That's right. Yeah, because I remember at some point Helmut was actually talking to Weird Al Yankovic to do it.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really? Oh,
yeah. And so he sent us a bunch of his CDs, but it didn't work out for whatever reason.
Yeah, that rap definitely, you can tell when the game came out from.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was kind of
It's embarrassing.
Ray Parker Jr., like Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
You might have even talked to him at some point. I don't know.
So one of the, I suppose, main design elements of the game is the really large maps. So each level is just one really big map, and you sort of get around it via teleporters and other things, rather than splitting it up into stages, I suppose. Was that difficult to implement from a tech perspective?
That was one of the very first problems I worked on, was to have the scrolling map. I wouldn't say it was especially difficult because the 3DO multiplayer was really good at rendering sprites. And so, it didn't have to be scaled, which it didn't, and it was fast enough to pull out of memory. So, I just had a big lookup table in memory. It's a big 2D lookup, and then I have a set of tiles, and then I allowed the editor to place tiles. So that was tedious, I'm sure, whoever had to do that. I just had to get it going. Let's see. So that was the easier part, even though it's really important to the game. But I wouldn't say that was especially hard. The hardest part was the pop-up videos. So in the game, sometimes the sergeant, the Captain Quazar's boss, would pipe in with some message, Quazar, going too slow, or whatever he's saying, right? There was just some bug in the operating system that if you did that too often, it just crashed. So it wasn't hard because it was hard to play video. It was hard because of a bug. So I had to compile the operating system with just get the whole thing on my computer so it could be debugged. And I had someone from 3DO sit down and step through and try to figure out what was causing the crash. So that was probably the hardest single technical problem, as I recall it. The scrolling field that worked pretty well. And once, in the art, when Greg produced these great set of tiles, then the designer could place them and make new levels. It was always a struggle with memory. I should point out the obvious. But once we laid out that memory, then there wasn't too much maintenance going on there.
Interesting, because the game had quite a lot of, I suppose, features that not a lot of games really had at the time. So it had a map system, a mission log, obviously all the cutscenes, and you can save and load, but various other 3DO games had that. Was any of those things more difficult to implement, or do you think of any of them as I suppose you'd rather you didn't have to implement them?
This really, it was just fitting everything into memory was the big overall challenge. I'd have to say, like, for example, for a period of months towards the end, I was making a build almost every night to give to the quality assurance team. So somewhere around 9 p.m., 10 p.m., I start making the build. And at that point, I would discover that some level didn't fit into memory. So we have 3 megabytes. I'd look that up. So then 3 megabytes. And our development kits, of course, have more because we have, can't be optimized all the time. So during testing by ourselves, everything's fine. But then when I go to make the build for QA, it doesn't fit in memory. And then I have to just go scrounge for memory. And so sometimes, I had to step on poor Greg's art. Like, I remember there's one building with a really fancy demolition animation, right? And those frames were large, and there's so many of them. And by taking out like half of them, basically, I made that build that night. So that's where I was scrounging from memory. I don't know if this is appreciated nowadays. I did some pretty crazy things with memory. I had a bunch of code that's required for starting the game, like starting a level. But after the level starts, you don't need it anymore. I grabbed the address of the function, and I had a little memory allocator that said, hey, if you need more memory, come here. And I just plopped the art down right onto the code in memory. And as long as I didn't call back into it, it's fine. As long as I didn't go too far, I was fine. But that would be a technique that you would really try not to do these days. Here's this function. It's in memory. I know where the address is. Let's just throw a texture at it, right over it, just right on top of it. So you don't do that anymore, thankfully. But those are the kind of lengths I had to go to. It's just a constant battle. So maybe the scope of the game was a little too large, or I don't know. Or, I just had so much great art to put in.
Yeah, how did you feel, I suppose, Greg and Yujin, as artists, whenever you had to compromise for, I suppose, game development? Yeah.
Well, that's always the rub between artists and programmers. You want to get as much in there as you can, but then there's limitations. Especially then, like he's saying, 3 megabytes. It's crazy. So it was always, you would paint up this beautiful thing, and then you'd have to shrink it down like 16 pixels, and then pluck all the pixels to kind of make it look as good as it could. And then still, it was too big. So that's frustrating. Like, look at this thing I did, but you don't see it in the game.
Yeah, that was always the worst, but especially back then, because you'd have this beautiful thing and then shrink it down to 8 by 8 pixels or something. Like, oh, okay, there's nothing left. But then also, I think part of the thing is kind of maybe we forget about it. But the tools weren't as robust for all that stuff. So, I mean, to get something to fit into memory or to down sample your art, and it wasn't as convenient as it is today. It was a lot of crashing programs and tools and custom written tools, and yeah, it was a pain in the butt.
Yeah, they crashed a lot too.
Yeah, every week, his name is Bob. Is that the guy who produced the cutscenes? The racing guy, the California racing guy.
Yeah, Claymation Studios.
Yeah, Claymation Studios. We get this. Yeah, was it on a tape drive? And we'd have to. I can't remember.
Or yeah.
Yeah, because every week he made a delivery like almost every Friday, and I remember for the next week we were just trying to get him off the tape, which we had with that one crappy little regular PC, and you guys were all on Macs, and I didn't even know how to use it practically. And then we tried to get them in, and then I think we used a Babelizer. Remember that old program? To I think we'd have to bring down the frame rate. I don't remember all the things and resize them. That was yeah. So I probably didn't answer your question, Jordan. I'm not sure. But that was pretty straightforward. Once we got the process down, that was pretty rote. I do remember, Greg, though, when you did those, I forgot those little pop-up scenes with the sergeant yelling at you. You did something really clever to make it look like static. I remember we were really proud of that. I can't remember that looked like TV static when it first came in, and it didn't use much memory by just shifting some pixels. I remember that was a clever implementation.
A noise filter or something. Yeah. But yeah, we had to do all those little videos that would pop up and the intros to each level, which those weren't rendered. They were just assembled like in Premiere.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we tried to push the hardware as much as we could. There was this one key trick, I guess I could say, that I found that really helped, and that's when I detected that we're going to miss a frame, or we're not going to render at 30 frames a second. I just double how far things are moving. I'm just stating the obvious, like keep the same velocity. And so when that happened, at least the motion felt still kind of natural, even if it dipped down to 15 frames a second for a little bit, just a little bit. That was our impression anyway. So when that happened, I guess the answer is we just kept on throwing art at it until it got even worse. So, or explosions. We allowed those moments to happen, and just tried to keep that frame rate quality going. Yeah, I guess that's yeah. So it's I did not have a budget. Like, it was too hard to know like how much overdraw there was. For example, like in a modern game, you could maybe give some metrics about how many triangles are you rendering and how much throughput pixels or texels from the source, and how much overdraw there is. But yeah, I didn't have any tools like that. So it was just a manual process of trying it out. And is most of the time, we just determined that it looked okay and moved on. But yeah, you could definitely drop the frame rate down, especially with some of the cheat codes. I put in a cheat code that allowed you to spin in a circle and throw out all of your grenades and all of your missiles in a short amount of time, and that would definitely bring down the frame rate.
Oh, really? That's interesting, because on most of the websites now, there's only about 2 or 3 cheat codes, and I don't think that's listed.
Oh, wow.
Do you remember what it is?
I have no recollection.
I do I do remember that cheat. I don't remember what it was, but I do remember playing with that all the time because it was fun and yeah, the frame rate was fun.
Right. You could fill up the screen with explosions and destroy everything, instantly, basically.
I think cheat codes are somewhat necessary in the game because it's very hard.
It is. I don't think I ever made it past the 3rd level.
No.
Isn't that the fatal flaw of the first level?
The first level was too hard, in my opinion.
It was a lot of work. I'll say that. It was our lives for 3 years. A lot of 15-hour days. And, I mean, it was fun because we were all young and making a game, and but it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
It was a good time though. Made a lot of good friends back in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah. I met my wife.
Hey, yeah, that was intense.
I think, I feel like, the industry's changed a lot, obviously, but back then, like Greg said, we were so young and we didn't have a lot of experience. So I think a lot of things that you see in the game or in any of the games that we produce you can kind of see where our inexperience was, like maybe the levels were too hard or something. We're just making a game for ourselves in a way. We were playing it ourselves. We didn't have like fancy QA. Well, maybe 3DO had QA, I can't remember, but it was just kind of enjoying ourselves, working really hard, a lot of hours, but it was kind of throwing ourselves into it. But it was maybe less sophisticated, I would say, the way we made things back then, because we were all young and the industry was younger. It was a different time, but tools were either we made them ourselves or we just made stuff up, and tools were not very sophisticated, so it was harder to make stuff. But it was a lot of fun for sure, and great people. I think you can see we all still keep in touch. That was one of the best teams I ever worked with. So.
Yeah. And even though we've been at different companies, Yujin and I have worked together almost every 2 or 3 years. We work together on some project.
Yes.
And maybe you'll go back and work with them again.
I'm always stalking people from that old team and trying to get them back on whatever team I'm on. So at the time. One funny thing I remember from Cyclone, Captain Quazar, wasn't that Helmet's voice that that we got so tired of hearing it because he would always say it. That was Helmet, right?
Yeah.
That was Helmet's voice.
Oh,
funny. I forgot about that.
I remember him recording that at his desk with the little Mac microphone.
It does that voice every time you use the cheat code to replenish your life as well.
Oh my God. That's too funny.
That's great.
Don't you think Helmet was the first to realize that? Because you guys pivoted even before those games shifted and started working on the PC games, didn't you?
Yeah, we moved to the PC right away. I think we saw that, trying to remember, the PlayStation 1 did things so much better. It was just better technically, and maybe having more weight for game development, bigger budgets. It was so much better suited for 3D graphics. The 3D multiplayer had it was just kind of severely limited.
Remember, it was coming in a lot cheaper too at the time.
The business model.
The 3DO was famous for being just obscenely expensive at the time.
That business model really failed 3DO. The idea that they would license the hardware production to different companies and have them compete with each other, but then they have to charge enough money to make a profit, and they couldn't take a loss. Like Sony can, if you're making the hardware and the games, you can take a loss on the hardware and then make up your profit on the games. So the business model is.
Yeah, and I think also having worked inside 3DO, they really truly thought, like you said, Jordan, there was going to be a multiplayer, this thing, I remember Tripp's speech, it's going to sit next to the television. The whole family's going to gather around. You're going to watch movies. You're going to play games. You're going to look at your photos. And I think Sony was smart and really concentrating on really great games, and that they had some of those capabilities. But that part of the 3DO that they always thought would take off, it really hasn't. It didn't we think?
Yeah. The idea was ahead of its time, though. I mean, I remember him talking about, you'll be shopping through the 3DO.
Oh, yeah. I remember that meeting with the nascent QVC, and they were going to sell stuff online. I forgot about that, Greg.
Yeah. And that you would be able to, like, you know, watch a TV show and say, like, what's she wearing? And then order it from there.
Yeah.
It's kind of coming into fruition now, but yeah, at the time.
I know.
Yeah, but at that time it was the people were focused on the hardware itself, not realizing, you know, later. I think Sony understood, like you said, Ron. It's like it's the content, not the hardware, right? I do remember in context, not so much Captain Quazar, but Battlesport, because when it came out, I remember we were all really sad because the 3DO was dying, and we finally made this game, and everyone loved. People thought Battlesport was a really fun game, and I do remember a small blurb in like Wired magazine saying this is a great game, as sort of, what did they say? It was like the sort of swan song for the 3DO. And we're just like, oh, great, there goes 3 years of our lives as a swan song. Yeah, it's like, but yeah, it was sad, unfortunately. But like I think what Jenna and Ron said is true, that Cyclone did pivot really quickly. We went to the PC right away, and that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
And really early, we were doing 3D stuff really early.
Yeah.
Internally, we started from scratch on the PC, so there was no code brought over, and the transition felt pretty smooth to me. We had a lot to learn, and we had to, render graphics with software. So that was the challenge. The hardware acceleration was not really there yet. I think the first hardware accelerators were technically decelerators. I mean, they could actually hurt your performance if you use them. That's how bad, so strange that time was. So yeah, no, that transition felt right. It felt good. In the broad.
Did you do the port?
No. Yeah, we didn't port anything.
Yes,
thank you.
Oh, we did. Yes, I have that too.
Oh yeah, we got.
Did you actually handle the port though, Ron?
No, it was a contract to some guy in London and UK, right? And I think it was a solo effort.
Yeah, I think so.
And so I just gave him all the code, and right away he did the right thing. He took out all of my crazy hacks to save memory because he had more than 3 megabytes to work with. And yeah, he did it. We had some. I participated in a couple of meetings where we checked up on the progress of the PC version of Captain Quazar. And I remember seeing it on a store shelf, but I don't think enough attention was paid to it to really translate the controller and the graphics. So I had nothing to do really with it. And it was kind of a rushed job, I think. So I think it probably shouldn't have been done.
I think Battlesport also came out on the PlayStation, didn't it, eventually? I think it
did. Wow, I don't remember that.
If it did, it wasn't by our studio.
I'm sure it was Battlesport.
Did 3DO port it?
I think that sounds right to me.
I don't recall.
Yeah, PS1. It did.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that. We knew it and we forgot. I don't know.
No, I don't think that was done internally.
Wow.
I bet you anything Rich got some deal to Rich Shane.
Yeah. I mean, it was probably a similar setup as porting to the Captain Quazar to the PC.
Wow.
Thanks, Jordan. I didn't know that.
Thank you.
At the time, I was happy to have the game put on more platforms, or to get onto the PC. And yeah, so I was happy about it. I wish 3DO had given me the source code. When you leave, when the company folds, I mean, you can't ever touch it again. You can't see the code. You can't see the art. Not the source art. So I wonder if it's in the vault somewhere, on a hard drive somewhere. Yeah, that's the only part that I miss, I guess, or that I feel maybe a regret, is that there's just no way to review or look at all this work, the original, the source work, the source material.
So no Captain Quazar HD then?
That's right, yeah.
Unless that guy you sent the code to in the UK still has it.
Oh.
That's right. Yeah, maybe he made a backup copy. Yeah, could be. I don't know. 3DO was very litigious. How do you say that? I did not want to, take any risks legally. For me, I was happy. I was very relieved to have it finished. We were working long hours. I think routinely 80 hours a week. It was way too much. And so, yeah, I was very happy to see it out. I was pretty happy with the overall quality and product. I thought the production quality was great. I mean, Greg's work, and I thought my work was, the technical part was fine. I had regrets about the gameplay, like the first level being too hard. I kind of wish a little more attention had been played on fine-tuning the game, just a little more time or attention. But yeah, I was proud of it. I was happy to see it in people's hands.
Yeah, it was in a lot of the game magazines back then. I think it got pretty decent reviews. It was neat to see them in print magazines,
Yeah, the reviews were genuinely all right. I think some of the bad ones were more because they were comparing it to PlayStation and Sega Saturn games rather than other 3DO games. So it's kind of treated a bit unfairly, I suppose, because of when it came out. Did you ever play any of the, I suppose, non-US versions of the 3DO? Because so where you say that you're aiming for 30 and then halved it to 15, in the UK where the consoles ran at 50 hertz, technically that was 25 and then half to 12.5.
Oh, so sorry. We had, I think, one PAL, the PAL format television.
Oh, that's right.
And so, it brings back another memory. One of the ways I tried to save memory, I needed every byte. I don't know if you know this about old TVs, or you probably do, Jordan. But there was an overscan area. So there's the part you could see, but there was a certain number of scan lines that were off screen always on all TVs that were produced. So I thought to myself, that's wasted memory. I'm just going to grab that frame buffer and store some textures in it or something, or code or something. So that's fine as long as you have the NTSC standard, or cathode array tube TV. And so for PAL, I'm trying to remember that I had to take that into account. But yeah, for sure, yeah, the frame rate is different. And yeah, that was. There was no time to really focus on that. It's like, we just want to make sure it works, but yeah, we didn't try to fine tune the velocity of things, for example, to take into account the frame rate. Yeah,
That's bad.
Accident.
I remember, just because I worked with a lot of the marketing people at 3DO, honestly, the markets they cared about the most was Japan and US. It seemed like Europe was always the third one, I remember correctly.
Yeah, we did a lot with localization. I remember that.
Oh yeah.
What was her name? she came over from Japan and she was working with us.
Oh yeah.
She's a Makiko.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was still keep in touch with her every once in a while. She ended up at EA, I think, artist.
Yeah.
You know, she started as a translator and then, but was an artist. But that's how she kind of got in, was through translating.
Yeah.
Right.
So she had to dig into all our UI art and change it to Japanese. So.
That's right.
Yeah, I think one of the main things is to not have to work like that ever again. The company I work with now is we do just art outsourcing and animation and effects and all that stuff. So we work on a lot of different projects every year, and that's always our main thing is just to make sure that we don't have to crunch. So make sure, you know, the estimates we have are pretty spot on so that there's a good balance of quality of life, because crunching like that is just no good. So try to avoid that as much as possible. Like I said, it was fun back then, but you don't want to do that for your whole life.
It's true.
Good point, Greg. Yeah, I agree. That's one of the big things, lessons learned. Although the very next game we worked on in Cyclone Studios that I worked on was Requiem of Avenging Angel. And right away we found ourselves not enough time and too much scope or not enough staff. And yeah, it was right back to the 80-hour work weeks. But thankfully since then, I'm not really doing that anymore. Yeah, let's see. I'm sure I learned a lot, Jordan. It was a great experience. Just, you know, being on a team and just, you know, business type aspects and just organizing code and just working as a team to get some product out the door. It was all really good experience. Working with QA a lot. It was a really good experience. It was all new to me at the time.
It's definitely, I mean, for me, that was my first games job, and yeah, I still carry all those lessons. You know, we made a ton of mistakes, but you know, we had fun doing it, and that was part of it. Like I said, we're young and just figuring stuff out as we went, and so for me, the experience since then, and in all the companies I've been with, all the people I've worked with, yeah, I carry that with me all the time. And with my current company, it's our own company now, and me and my biz partner, it's all those accumulation of all those experiences, all the mistakes we made. And I think game development is kind of, it's a tricky thing. So the more experience you have, and I think, it just keeps you from having to work those crazy hours again. Or I'd do it again, though. It was fun. It was fun. And it was how we learned, by making all those mistakes. Yeah, I carry a lot. I mean, I'll still rant about things from Cyclone to this day to Mark, my biz partner, or we get together and we think about the old days and remember, how we did things. And so, yeah, definitely working on Quazar and Battlesport and Requiem, all the other games we did there, and it's carried that with me the whole time, for sure.
I think the only thing I would add is that having worked like at corporate 3DO and then EA and Blizzard, these big entities, it was so much nicer having that really tight team, especially that first Cyclone team with just where everyone was actually doing stuff on the game. You didn't have a lot of overhead marketing looking over your shoulder. You could just concentrate on what made the game great. And that to me is a lot. I think that's a much better way to work.
I think it's good to think big. That's another lesson I felt like I learned, especially from Helmet, that if I were doing this on my own, I wouldn't have thought to reach out to the creator of California Raisins, this claymation company. I wouldn't have thought to reach out to Weird Al Yankovic. And so that was, I appreciate that. That's something I've learned from Helmut, to think big.
Yeah.
Not be afraid to take chances too. And maybe the other thing was that, especially for a young person, this kind of investment of time really was it really paid off. And it was a good time of my life, I think all of our lives, that we could take this kind of risk of maybe not making a lot of salary, but learning a lot. And so, yeah, I think the experience really paid off. Meeting good people.
Yeah, when I look back on it now, I think we were all in our 20s, and most of us hadn't really made any games before. And it's kind of incredible looking back on it now that we actually pulled it off, and we made, several games and actually got them published and released. I mean, it's pretty rare, actually. Because, everyone I'm working with now, they always say, like, oh, we want to make our own game. I'm like, do you, though? I mean,
yeah, I think we were lucky that I think the team, the people that I've kept in touch with, at least from Cyclone, really did go on and continue to make games that did get, published and shipped. And maybe they're not all necessarily successful, but just to get the thing out the door in the box, as they used to say, was just so difficult. And yeah. I think though, but that was also, for me, it was really fun, and I still find fun, is this kind of that, yeah, we don't know what we're doing, but let's go give it a shot, and we'll figure it out. And now, obviously, we're much more confident. We'll figure it out as we go. I think we kind of know a little more what to do. But back then, it was like when we pivoted to the PC, and someone would drop a 3D program at the time. What was it? Autodesk, like some kind of CAD thing. Just drop it in your lap and say, yeah, we're going to make a game in 3D, and you're like, okay, just like, let me install this thing and start figuring out what's going on. And I don't know, we never thought like, oh my God, we can't do this. It was just kind of like, all right, yeah, this is fun. Let's go check it out. And then somehow we managed to pull it off. But yeah, a lot of hours because a lot of mistakes. But I don't know. It's a kind of spirit I always enjoy.
Yeah, those years are really crazy. Looking back on that too, just how everything started developing. Like you're saying, like 3D programs hadn't really taken hold. And
yeah, that's the thing. Tools weren't.
Yeah, go ahead.
The tools were so less sophisticated. I remember Martin was another one of the artists at Cyclone. He was doing UV maps on graph paper, literally sitting there with paper and pencil and graphing out the polygon because there was no tools to do that. And so it's that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know how we figured out to do that. I was probably talking to programmers, but yeah, that kind of attitude of just, go figure it out. It was really interesting.
I think you had to build 3D models in a text file.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
And so to figure out the coordinates, you had to graph it on graph paper, physical graph paper, and then transcribe that into a text file.
Yeah.
Nuts.
That's right. I remember later on we had to do shaders in text files too. We had to write out but I remember this is a little bit later at 3DO, but it's just one of those things again, because it was everything was so new back there. I remember a graphics card, one of the cutting edge graphics cards from some company. That wasn't NVIDIA. It was one that NVIDIA beat out, but it's still around.
3DFX probably.
Yeah, 3DFX. Like that card caught fire in your machine run, and I was at my desk next to Ron, and I was like, "What's that smell?" I was like, "Something's burning," and like that card had overheated, and Ron was coding. It was on record if you're doing something. I think you were like our main engine guy. That's right, at that time. So.
How funny! I don't remember.
Something's burning.
Oh, I do remember the smell. I think I do.
And then smoke was coming out of your machine, and you were like, "Oh shit!" It was like, you plugged in, and there goes that prototype 3DFX card. But that kind of experience, I think, is very valuable to me to this day. Again, it's for that kind of, just go figure it out attitude.
Thanks for watching this making of. I had a lot of fun making it, and thanks to Ron, Jennifer, Greg and Yujin for joining on the call and telling all their stories. It was a lot of fun to make. If you like what you saw, make sure to subscribe and share this video, give it a like and comment too, and you can also follow me on Instagram at Mr. Jordan HJ. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.